Welcome to the final episode of our Ryuutama series, everyone. This is the very last episode of 2022 for us, and we have some extraordinary discussion in this episode to wrap up the end of the year. So stay tuned for that. Until then, here's what's coming up in our call to action after the show.
This will probably be our last reminder about this, but most of you are probably now getting ads in your feeds. We tried to make the transition as smooth as possible with as few interruptions as possible, and it seems to be working out pretty well so far. There will be 2 ad slots before the show and 2 slots after the show before the credits. But if that's still too many ads for you, we do have a deal for you in our call to action section after the show. In addition to that, we've got our normal sign-offs, a special message for the end of the year, and a review. So stay tuned for all of that, everybody. We are thankful to have you here with us, reading in the new year. So enjoy the show, everybody. Welcome back to our discussion episode. Last time we finished our session 0 for Ryuutama. This episode, we will be discussing the character creation process. We're excited to welcome back Amber Seger from the Tabletop Babble podcast. Do you want to go ahead and reintroduce yourself for everyone and tell us a little bit about the character you made in our last episodes?
Sure. Hi again, everybody. You can find me most of my stuff online at rocketorca.com. I'm a graphic designer. I own a TTRPG indie publishing company called The Cloud Curio. And the character that I made last time is a little gnome named Herschel, who is a minstrel, who is an attack. I would clarify. He's an attack minstrel.
An attack minstrel.
An
Yep.
attack minstrel who is a puppeteer. That's very important to note. He is very green, as in that is the choice of color that he wears. And he, on his shoulder is perched a little tiny stuffed parrot, and he's traveling because he wants to reintroduce puppetry to the world.
Yeah.
That is also not only an art form, well, I guess it's art on 2 levels, entertainment and martial.
Yes.
So that's Herschel. And that's who I made last time.
Herschel.
Amazing.
Ryan, tell us a little bit about your character.
All right. I made Elora. She is a young noble at the age of 19 who is also a cat person with calico markings and auburn hair. She comes from a small-ish trading town from a noble family, and the youngest of 5 kids, and all of her older siblings are well-versed in the family business, and she didn't really have much of a place there anymore, so she decided, I need to use my inheritance for good of the world, so let's invest in some art and find myself along the way. And this puppetry thing sounded pretty sweet, so why not?
Solid investment.
Why not? Exactly. Amelia, how about your character?
Sure. I made Coraline. I'm picturing Coraline actually as just, a regular human lady. She is an artisan. She specializes in fabric dyes. And she is on this journey because she wants to invent a new color. She dresses in various shades of pink, just lots of different layers of fabrics. You got to be ready for all weather situations. If there's anything we in the Midwest know, it's the importance of layering. And Coraline firmly believes in that as well. And so she's off to basically mash up anything she can into some form of dye and see if she can make a new color.
Ooh.
She's not as crazy as Herschel. But I do imagine her making tiny outfits for the puppets.
Oh,
so.
absolutely. You have to. I'm going to be commissioning you to make tiny puppet or outfit.
Tiny puppet outfits.
Uh-huh.
And she's like,
Puppet
this
outfits.
is not what I trained for. But
Yeah,
sure. Right.
absolutely.
They're the best dressed puppets in all the world.
Well, let's go ahead and dive right into a segment that we are calling D20 for your thoughts.
D20 for your thoughts?
So in this portion, we talked to our guests about their thoughts on the character creation process, how it went in this game compared to other games that you've played. But first, the cliche podcast question every time somebody's on a tabletop RPG podcast. Let's get it out of the way. How did you get into RPGs?
Oh boy.
I love these stories. I love these stories.
Okay, good. Because I have a really funny one where it's
Good.
like, I was growing up, I was a anime nerd, cartoons, comics, and like my brother and I did a lot of like story creation and stuff. Like we make our own little comics together and stuff. But in high school, there's like two getting into RPGs. When I had my first introduction when I was like 11 years old, and we were playing Heroes, or no, Champions is the game it was called. And I was 11 and I was bad at math, and I had an experience where basically the GM was basically saying, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do that. And I was like,
This is
games
not
this isn't going to be for me if this is what it's going to be like. So age 11 until like high school, I knew about Dungeons and Dragons. I saw kids playing it. I just was like, I'm not that kind of nerd. Like that is not for me. And my friend Josh kept like, once I got out of high school, he kept being like, you'll love this. You like making characters. You get to draw your character. You get to do storytelling. It's really fun. And he just kept like poking at me. And then he got me to play. And then I played D&D 3.5 for 7 years straight, every other week. So that is a resistant, like a bad kind of like child experience with it. Then I'm not that kind of nerd to wow, I'm doing this is a huge portion of my life for
all
7
in.
years.
Yeah.
All in, just all in.
Yeah. I feel like that's not too dissimilar from my journey, which was like, did it for a little bit, broke up with my GM, he killed my character, and I was like, don't know about this. And then like didn't play for a long time, and then like watched other people around me starting to do it again and being like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'll try it. And then like now here I am.
Right.
There you
Yeah.
Well, Amber, what do you look for in a system as far as character creation goes? Like what sort of pieces need to be there for you to create really great characters?
That is a very good question. And it has evolved over time, right? Like maybe when I was younger and first getting into it, I would be really looking at just like, oh, I really like the art. This is really inspiring to me. And then but I was also very reliant on GMs to help me through character creation. But now that I'm a GM, and then also I went to school for instructional design, and I think about like user experience a lot. A really good check, like a really good order of operations of like, this is number 1, do this, number 2, do this, number 3, do this. I think that really needs to be there for me at the beginning before I can really like be creative in character creation. Because if you get confused during character creation, it becomes more about the frustration than it is, and then you don't really want to create stuff.
Yeah, it derails like the creative momentum.
Right. And so that's kind of like what I look for now is like, is there a good like order of operations, a good checklist of that's very clear, concise, that takes you through, and the character sheet like reinforces that. Like the character sheet has to like follow that flow as well as people are making stuff. Then when it comes to creative things, like I really like it when, like, for instance, in Ryuutama, just like the personal item thing, like that only exists really to add flavor. But one of the things I really like about in like other systems, like Powered by the Apocalypse, is when you have like bonds and stuff. That is also like anything that helps the players connect with each other, like their PCs connect with each other, is also something that I really like look for in character creation too.
Yeah, definitely. I think anything that helps you kind of buy in and avoid that like meeting in a tavern situation really helps me out a lot. And I like the ability to kind of play off of other people and say like, well, if you're doing this, then it would make sense for me to do that.
Right.
It builds sort of like a party unity too. We like to look at our character sheets and kind of see what they tell us about the game. It's sort of your first interaction with play is the character sheet. We had a number of issues in this one when we were kind of playing with the character sheets. So what do you think? I know you mentioned you have kind of made your own. So like I'm interested in what things you felt you needed to change or what has helped you with that.
Yeah, it's one of those cases. I don't know if you all are Great British Bake Off watchers or not, but Paul will usually say, style over substance. And unfortunately for Ryuutama, I think they try to stylize this in a way that kind of overrides basic user experience stuff. So the character creation I did for my session 0 on Shapeshift, the podcast that my first campaign was recorded on, one of my players was like really new to RPGs, and I started out using these character sheets and they got really confused. I think even you, Ryan, were like, wait, there's a condition bar here. What does that mean?
Yeah.
And it's nothing to do with the actual like character creation process. That's something that happens later on as you're playing the game. And so my player was going through this and was feeling like they didn't do a good job filling it out because there were so many blanks or stuff.
There was a lot of empty boxes left over.
Right. And so I immediately was like, and this kind of like I've already been redesigning character sheets in the past. Like I redesigned my 3.5 character sheet back when I was in that campaign for 7 years. But this one was my like third, I think, one that I like was playing around with, because the way that information was set up in here didn't really help with the actual step process. Like you had to be like, wait, on this side of the sheet, I have this stuff, or what does that slash mean? Like I'm supposed to put 2 classes here, or is it class and something else? And it's like, no, that's for later on. Like that kind of stuff is the things where if you don't like, we talk about playtesting games, you should also be playtesting your character sheet and character creation in games as well, because that's the kind of stuff that really prevents people, like I said earlier, like that frustration. So like another big style over substance thing in here is like, the strength. They added these giant icons that I'm like, I love the intent behind them, but I'm also like, does it really help at all? Could you have used that space more wisely with stuff?
Right.
There's a lot of stuff also on this character sheet where it's like talking to you about like the terrain and weather boxes are on here, but you don't. That's not related to your character. Yeah. Right. So this is where I talk about. This is where I get real nerdy.
Go for it.
Because one of my other like passions is like information organization. And I actually have on my website a blog series about designing better character sheets. And I talk a lot about like what's active information versus like passive information. And in the TTRPG world, specifically around character sheets, when I mean active, it's like stuff the player is going to be like looking at and referring to the entire time they're playing the game. Like the majority of the things that they need to do in order to move through the game is what's active. And passive stuff, like things that come up maybe once in the session or maybe one or every two, like the terrain stuff. That's passive. That's not something you need to do to like hit something or to cast a spell.
Right.
Or
It's a
to
fact
make
that's
check.
important to know, but you're not using.
Right.
Right.
And like even like your character information, like your name and your, you know, your color, your items, that kind of stuff, that's more passive too, because it's like you as you're playing your character know in your mind what your character looks like. You don't need to be constantly reminded that your character's name is this, that, you know, whatever, or your experience. So when I looked at this sheet and my players, they're like, Amber, please, can you redesign? Can you please redesign this? And I will hopefully by the time this episode gets out, I'll put something up on my website so people can see how I went, what it looked like and where it went to with my stuff. But I tried to do that. I tried to put their active stuff forward, like especially like things like your character classes, right? Like where on here do you like your class and skill stuff is on the sheet that is with your XP and your character name, but it's not underneath your stats when that's really important to have your stat information near the things and the skills that you need to roll with, right? Like now it's on a different page. So now you're like, oh wait, what do I need to do for a knowledge tradition check? Oh, it's my int. Now I have to flip the page over and go look at what my int is, right?
Oh, that's
so I try to keep things related to each other that work together. So I love Ryuutama, but this is definitely, the character sheet was definitely a stumbling block for my players and for me when we first started playing with this game.
And I'm sitting here filling it out on the PDF, right? So the sheets are side by side there. I thought this was just a horizontal character sheet, like landscape mode. And to know that it's traditionally on
like a front and back,
that's even more mind boggling. Like the amount of flipping of this character sheet would be ridiculous.
Yes. It was. And my players were like, oh God. And that's one of the things that I also talk about is like user experience design is like empathetic design. Like you have to put yourself in that person's shoes, and you just don't want to be like, well, they'll deal with it. It's like, no, but do they have to? As me as a graphic designer, it's like, or an information designer, I don't want people have to work harder. I want people to work less to be able to interact with a thing that I want them to enjoy, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But I also approach things in a way as an ADHD person, like something like this character sheet's just overwhelming because there's just too much information.
There's so many boxes. So many boxes.
So many boxes. I could be very nitpicky about like line weights and font sizes and font choices as well. I'm not going to get too into it, but there's
did I need the giantest box to be for like my image color / appearance and like hometown? Like,
and but then your master weapon is like the size of like, you know, half of a cheetah.
I had to write like really tiny.
And what if you get 3 of them?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
There's no spots on here to write anything about my magic stuff.
Nope.
Oh yeah.
I had to make a magic sheet for my player.
There was no spot for a carrying capacity.
Yeah, so it seems like there's some key information that's missing. It's a little out of place. I think this is one of the first character sheets we've been like hypercritical of. I can kind of see it working once it's all filled out a little bit, especially if you're printing it both sheets in a landscape mode, but then your font's smaller and yada yada yada. But like,
yeah, I mean, a thing that we often talk about is like, if I look at the character sheet, does it give me a sense of what things are going to be prominent in the game? What things I'm going to be using, what I'm going to be doing in the game. And like the things that are more important should be sort of at the forefront. They should be bigger. You know, like you look at a D&D sheet and it's like you can very clearly see like, here is my weapon, here are my stats, here are, you know, like all of those kinds of things. And obviously like you want to avoid having so many sheets. You know, like nobody wants like 5 pages. And I recognize that like, you know, space is at a premium. Like there's only so many things that you can, you know, do on there. But like it is not clear from this that like journeying is really a part of it. It's like I've got my skills, I've got like my strength and that kind of stuff like in these big bold numbers. And then like there's, you know, like the stuff about the terrain and everything.
I mean, the terrain and weather kind of gives me the feeling that a journey through places is kind of big with the game.
I just remember as I'm doing this thinking, oh my God, the eraser marks.
Yeah. That's true too.
Yeah. Like
I almost feel like there needs to be like a separate journey sheet, which I think there is, right?
I would like to, I'm trying to find stuff for you guys, but basically what I did was, you know, okay, this is to show you the kind of, what I hyperfixate on stuff. So I have my GM book. And, you know, I have my I would make a map for the starting town. Here's my Ryuutama sheet. I'm trying to show this to you all, so I'm sorry if there's crinkle noises coming through everybody. I actually had my my PCs, so I knew what their roles were for me.
Okay.
But and everybody got this. Everybody got a journey sheet, and I'm trying to find it right now. Everybody got the journey rules, which I had redone to look very clean and nice. And that's what you need separately. It's like, you don't need the traveling rules on your character sheet. Like that should just be a separate thing. And that's what I wanted to go. I was going to touch on the whole like idea of, oh man, I have 5 sheets. This is too many sheets. That's not really a problem if the information is like super clear and where it's supposed to be.
Right.
Like if you know that I just have to go to the journey sheet for this information and it's here, like there's again, I won't go super hardcore cognitive behavior on you guys, but like there is there's reasons why if you do things, if things are organized better, you could put stuff in front of people forever. Like there's the tolerance of going through a thing is like higher if it's clear and understandable as you go.
Right.
And I'm a big fan of like handouts in games and you know, that kind of stuff. And I think something like a journey sheet or like a world building sheet or something like that too is useful, like as like for the table too. Which makes it a little bit different because I know in a lot of my groups, like I'm sort of become like the designated note taker because that is the kind of person that I am.
Yeah.
And so that like afterwards people are like, okay, tell us what happened. And I'm fine with that. If you're cool with taking on some of that responsibility too, if you're the kind of person that has like, you're okay bearing that cognitive load.
Yeah. And to be fair, I mean, Ryuutama does have a lot of these supplemental sheets in the back of the book that you would print off or copy with the character sheet, but
none of them were for magic.
There is a notes sheet for recording spell songs and other things. And it's just a blank. It's just a blank.
It's just
note
a blank sheet, though. Like it's just called like notes. It's not for magic.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a little clunky. It's like it feels like your characters are going to have like 5 or 6 sheets on the clipboard to be able to fully utilize the character. Sounds like a nightmare for an AP, honestly.
But because like I designed stuff in a way that didn't have to be that clunky. So basically it was like, because I'm super extra. So I don't think every GM should be expected to do this or be held to this level. I just love making packets and writing instructions. So basically I would, after our first like kerfuffle, like going through all of this and one of my players having a hard time making a character, after like the 4th session, I made everybody a packet and I redesigned everything for everybody. And basically it was like, here's your character sheet. And again, I'll put this up on my blog so that everybody can see what I did. And I'll make sure you guys get the link whenever I post it. But basically it was like, here's everything you need to do to actually operate as a character. here is the journey rules. Here is the quartermaster's inventory sheet. Here is your magic book. I made a magic spell book for my magic player that had the rules. Everybody had a combat sheet, and I made them a little folder for all of their things so that they could then just use that. And then once we got that down, it was like, okay, everybody just look at your combat sheet, get the combat sheet out. We're going into combat now. And then we did better.
Right.
But this is one of those,
have to do all
but you
of
shouldn't
that.
have to do that. And I'm not saying a GM should have done that. Like you don't have to do that. You should, and you shouldn't have to. But it's one of those like learning experiences, interacting with this, that's made me think about how I design like game stuff. Because if you got into this and you're like, I want to make an actual play, like you just said, it's like, man, this sounds like people are just gonna be turning sheets and there's gonna be a lot of noise and it's gonna be horrible. But I also kind of recorded in a way that was very like, all right, we're in travel mode right now. Yeah. Okay, nope. Now we're in city mode now.
I'm very curious, like how close these translated sheets are in form to the original 2007 sheets. Because if it's like a 1-to-1 for everything, I can easily see, because this is 2007's that in between, that was 15 years ago. Before the indie boom, before people cared about accessibility as much, all that sort of stuff. It was like post super crunchy rules, like things were starting to find their way in. And I can kind of see from that perspective, the sheets being kind of like I just need the information out there. It doesn't matter how many sheets they use. And this is kind of the form that I want it to be in, without thinking.
you're kind of trying to translate one for one in a way that doesn't.
So like 2014, 2015, you're looking at it and it's like, well, this isn't perfect, but let's just translate it and get it out there, because we want to keep the original experience from the Japanese version,
right,
and move that over to English. I can see that being the kind of course of actions that led us to this point. Now, if this game were designed today, I can definitely imagine that these sheets would look completely different.
Yes. Probably, especially because now you can hire people like me to do your user experience, like feedback or design to begin with, which I have done for people for character sheets specifically. Because it's one of those things where you don't think about it really, but it's such a major part of the game. That's how someone's going to be interacting with. Your players are primarily interacting with your game via a character sheet, so.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's like the first sort of hands-on thing that we talk to a lot of people that, their start in role-playing games was like, well, I found this book and I just created a bunch of characters.
Yeah.
It's one of those first things that you see too. And if you stumble already at character creation, how often is that stopping people from getting a lot further?
Right.
Like if I can't understand how to make a character, how am I going to play it?
Right, exactly. And that's why I remember, I can't remember what year it was, but it was pre-pandemic, going to Gen Con. I used to do tons of panels, and one of the panels I put on, I think it was like the second or third time I was doing it, was designing better character sheets. And the Pathfinder 2E sheet came out, and like immediately I was getting tagged by people who knew that I like did character sheet redesign, and they're like, look at this. And I went, oh no.
Oh, my eyes.
I guess I have another image I can use in my presentation. Thanks, Pike. But it's because I don't think, again, going back to like people, like if you going back to my whole statement, like empathy, like good user design is empathetic design. It's like you need to be thinking about, you don't know who's going to be approaching your book for the first time, right? And it could be somebody who has dyslexia, or in my case, ADHD, and immediately shuts down when I see too much stuff like in front of me, and I don't know how to suss through it all. And if you want people to play your game or buy your game or, get excited about your game. And this is like the primary mode that someone's going to experience your game, and it's confusing or overwhelming or frustrating, then you just lost potentially a customer or multiple customers because they don't want to bring it to their friends,
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
anyway, that's my soapbox.
Yeah. I mean, and there's definitely a feeling, like I said, because there's so many empty boxes too, that you're like, did
I'm
I
missing.
do this wrong?
Yeah.
Did I, like you're flipping through and trying to
Which-
find where do things go. And I like it to be clear, especially in creation too. Like, you've told me to do this thing. Where do I put it?
Right, exactly. I just want to point out something that you said. Did I do this wrong?
Yeah.
This is such a common consumer thought that we don't even consider that the person who designed a thing did something wrong.
Right.
In my previous non-RPG life, when I worked in consumer goods and did user experience with physical products, and they were working with prototypes, and I knew for a fact the prototype had problems. It wasn't, oh, the prototype is wrong. It's, I did this wrong.
Mhm.
And it's like, it's not you. I promise you. You are not broken.
interesting. I
You
hadn't
are not
even
broken.
thought about that. That it's like the number of games that I've looked at, and it's like, it is still my reaction of like,
Yeah. My friend
what
Sally.
step did I miss?
Yeah. My friend Sally has always been like, I feel like I'm not getting something. Like I'm the one missing something. I was like, no, they have failed you
Right.
in some way. But it is a very interesting consumer behavior that I've witnessed over the course of like 15 years of working in this like watching people world. It's like no one will ever think it's their fault. They will, or no one will ever think it's the designer's fault or this. They just think something's wrong with them.
Yeah.
Well, because I think your first thought is like, this has been focus grouped and tested,
Yes.
and like,
it's a book. It has legitimacy. It's been,
right? Like, someone put it on paper and I paid for it. So clearly somebody knew something. Like,
yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting. But you're right. Yeah, that is my first reaction is where did I miss something? What did I do?
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, that kind of leads us into how does the character creation in Ryuutama stack up to other systems we played? I know we got the clunky character sheet discussion out of the way, but aside from that, what do we think about it?
Okay. So on this show, generally we're like pretty positive about the games, unless it's a game that we're like, we know this one. Like, we did Shadowrun and we're like, this is ridiculous. We did Deadlands, and we had a lot to say about like trying to find things in the book. We did Heroes Unlimited. But this one, it's like, I really like, as we're going through the premise of the game and what playing the game is like and stuff, I was like really, really into it. And as we're going through character creation, I'm like getting less and less into it as I start like interacting with some of that stuff. And that's not to say that like the experience of playing it probably, probably still is great, but it's like the process is sort of turning me off to it because I didn't feel like it connected me with what we were doing. I don't feel like I connected with the other characters that we made very well, because the world building, like we have nothing really
Right.
aside from like what we made. And I do understand that like travel and journeying and like discovery along the way is part of it, but like
it feels like it would be more fun to play these characters than it was to create them.
Which is not usually where we land.
Right. It was interesting.
It's very weird. It's very weird.
I think if we did full world building and then, town creation and whatnot, maybe it would be a little bit more interesting. But also there's no like relationship binding mechanics in the character creation process either. So these are...
I don't feel like particularly tied to this person.
Right. These are three individuals that have their own goals, and we kind of had to force ourselves to say this is how we're going to connect ourselves.
Yeah, but like we didn't give them any flaws. We didn't give them any strengths. Like I don't feel like this is a person.
Right. And I think that's why it's not the focus of the game, right? This game obviously is not focused on characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's obviously really trying to put forth the travel stuff
Yeah.
first and foremost.
That's really interesting.
Which is, like I said, if you're playing like, for me, like, I remember making characters and we had to do a lot of work to make it all, like, our session 0 was 3 hours long because we had to spend a lot of time getting it all to, like, everybody to, like, make sense together as why they would all be traveling together, why they did this. I had to come up with a whole guild system that was like, there's a reason why you all know each other in the first place. It's not in a tavern. It's this thing instead where you get to, like, pick jobs and things. And this is why you're brought here. And we had to do, like, a lot of that massaging to make the bonds happen. Whereas games like, but even, like, in the part where it's like you're picking your class, the skills aren't really exciting.
No.
You know,
no, I was looking at, like, trapping and I'm like, what is that? Like, that has nothing to do with what I want.
Right, exactly. So it's like, when I think in the last episode, I mentioned I want there to be more. That's the more that I'm missing. The more is how do you create a deeper character or things that are more exciting? Like, even the spells, like, I wish there was more strong, cohesive things about this game that made me feel more invested earlier on and not 5 sessions in.
Yeah, it is interesting because, like, the one bit of personality you get is that personal item.
Yes.
Right.
And aside from that, it feels very like this is what you get and that's it. But also very JRPG inspired, right? Because that is a lot of the genre of, like, this is what you're starting out as. This is what you get.
Yep.
There's no personality to, like, look at Final Fantasy 1 and you've got choose your class and then now your class can do stuff and you get things at specific levels and then that's it.
Right.
Right. So it kind of follows that sort of line of reasoning too, which makes sense.
So like, thinking about it against, like, other games I've played and made characters in, I don't look at Ryuutama and go, all right, I'm going to get, like, in, like, fun, exciting interpersonal role play with people. Whereas if I go to Monster Hearts 2, I know we're going to be, like, really role playing with each other, and then there's going to be this. So it's like, okay, these are different games.
Yes.
Right.
And the character creation in Ryuutama is not set up for role play.
Yeah.
Like, at the character creation process is not set up for role play.
Which is interesting because when we talked about it, it felt like that is kind of
it's like a
part
big
of what's
point
happening.
Of the
because,
game.
like, you're doing all of this journeying and it's like, well, it's
and that's more like in the play of the game, but not necessarily the character creation. And I think it could be better in that regard.
Yeah.
Like, if it had even just a little bit more questions. Like, there was also, I think there's games out there, I can't remember the systems, where it's like you could ask questions of each other.
Yeah, a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games have that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think one I played it was like a circus one. I can't remember what it's called, a carnival one. I can't remember. They had, like, everybody asked questions of each other. That does not exist in this character creation. All it cares about is I don't know, your stats.
It would be interesting if they did make a second edition of this game and they brought in, like, the more modern concepts of role-playing games and role-playing character creation and all that sort of stuff, because we didn't really see much of that in the mid 2000s in terms of, like, how you create characters, how you create parties, that sort of stuff. So if they brought that sort of stuff into like
sort of design sensibilities have definitely changed.
Oh exactly. I keep having to remind myself, this is old.
This is very old.
This came out in Japan when I was graduating high school. So, like, it's older, and, you know, I think my experience has changed from that. I mean, because like even when I first started D&D, like playing D&D, I didn't know you could describe your spells.
Yep.
I thought you just said I cast magic missile, I cast fireball, and
Yep.
Right.
it looks like magic. The end.
Mhm.
Right, exactly.
Why
And
do
I
I
think,
have to
like the
sympathize?
birth of sort of like actual plays and things like that, I think have changed how a lot of people view what role playing can be too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
To hear some
Yeah.
of that. In the interest of time, I know our next two questions, it feels like we've kind of,
Yeah,
done
we've
that already.
kind of
Sure.
covered one of the
So-
biggest flaws of character creation. But what's your favorite part?
I don't think I have a favorite part, to be quite honest. Like,
I have a feeling it might be that personal item.
yeah, it's probably the personal item, and then like that's pretty much it. I think the part I like about this is making up, like combining the type and class is really fun. But
Yeah.
again, I wish there was more to it, more than just, like I can make an attack minstrel, which is hilarious to me. I like that. I wish there was more of that. And I think that was the general feel as well for my players too. They're like, oh, it's really cool to have these 7 characters types, but like I wish there was more. I wish they were more varied and more
Right.
interesting, more nuanced.
Yeah, and I wish that it gave you the tools to like mash them together a little bit more, because it was like pick this thing, and then it was like we were left to kind of come up with like,
Yeah.
what does that look like? And I would have liked a little more like not guidance necessarily, but like just more like more like, because it was like they didn't really talk at all about how any of those things work together.
No,
It was just
not
like,
until like
oh,
later on.
you like also do magic.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it
it
was like,
really-
okay,
it-
and like none of the spells really like gave me the opportunity to like combine my class with the
Yeah.
magic.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, also you do magic, here's some spells. And it was
Right.
like, but I don't know that it does really have anything to
it's
do with
so
like how I
close.
envision my character.
Right.
It's
right.
it's like on the cusps of a bunch of different things that if they were able to push it a little further and combine a few more modern sensibilities
Mhm.
into the design, I think it could really knock it out of the park for the character creation for this sort of game. Absolutely.
Definitely. So like let's go ahead and get into our fanfic section where we pretend that we're gonna play this game.
Okay.
Because we don't really have anything. Usually we come into this and it's like we've got a
Yeah.
couple strings to pull on and interesting things that we want to talk about and flesh out more, but we don't really have anything.
Well, I don't know. There's a few really interesting questions I think that we kind of hinted at, like what happened to puppetry in this world? Like why do you want to bring it back? Why is it gone?
Why was it big before? Like, was it really big before? Or is it just like, you're like, I'm going to make it big?
I think, I watch a lot of Game of Thrones. I like political intrigue.
Me
So
too.
in my head, it's like, okay, why would puppetry be like a dwindling thing? Well, obviously someone had some sort of vendetta against it because he saw like some rich, powerful person saw himself being depicted poorly in a puppet play and he said, all puppets are banned and banned it across the land.
The Meisterburger complex.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of like, it was like, oh, you don't really do this. But
I also wonder too if it got banned and like fell out of fashion and that kind of stuff. Like there's also an artistry to being able to do puppeteering and to like make the puppets and that
Right.
kind of stuff, like the sort of like quote unquote like infrastructure around puppeteering.
right.
Like is that,
puppet regulation?
Oh, they got
Well,
puppet,
and just,
puppet
like,
underground.
like I mean like the puppet supply line, like the puppet supply chain,
Yeah.
like who do you know somebody who can like make these puppets? Do you make them yourself? Do you like is that there's obviously like not a huge call for like tickets to puppet shows.
Right.
Like how do you
Oh, you go to the underground puppet shows.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So
Yes.
Oh yeah,
scandalous.
the underground puppet
Yes.
shows. You got underground puppet battles, and
Yeah.
oh yes, because they are apparently
There
martial
is an
art as
art
well.
to it. Maybe that's part of it too. It's like not only were puppets spreading anti-monarchy propaganda, but they're also assassins.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
I
Yeah. So
love
like they're
the thought
considered
of-
like dangerous and treasonous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, because who suspects the puppet? Like you could go from the ceiling or the skylights probably were popular in this world.
You could just pop it
right?
on down.
Just pop it on down and nice little stabby stab. You're good to go.
No
Oh.
fingerprints because it was done by a puppet.
I love the idea of like,
A puppet government. Oh no.
that. Oh man, it works on so many levels, huh? But like, just like, I thought about like people, like the idea of this all came to me when I was thinking about like, how can I want to be an artisan or a minstrel, but also I want to be attacking. And I was like, yo-yos as weapons. Why not puppets as weapons?
Yeah.
And I like to imagine like you got like, all sorts of different like factions of puppetry where it's like there's combat, like hand-to-hand martial puppet stuff.
Mhm.
But like if you want to go even bigger in this world, it's like if you think about like a JRPG, one of my favorite JRPGs is called Rhapsody, a Musical Adventure. It's super, I don't know if it's obscure. Maybe somebody out there listening knows what I'm talking about, but it's about a girl who can talk to puppets. And so she can also summon puppets. So I was like, oh, wouldn't it be great to be able to summon these constructs too that are puppets and stuff one day? That's the ultimate goal.
Oh yeah.
Is you can summon a puppet army or summon a puppet, Baphomet or whatever. Bahamut.
Oh, that would be
Anyway.
wild.
I love
And I
it.
can just see it in my mind, like this like pixel version, like an isometric
Mhm.
view, and like these puppets are flying down from the sky. Or you summon
Oh.
one big one and it just goes
Yeah.
boom.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Well, you can do so much with puppets, from like the small little things to like Muppet sized things to, big, giant, effectively machines, right?
Mhm.
That you could manipulate to do various things. I think that could be a really fascinating thing to explore during the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Puppets.
See, and like that is like so much like deeper of a concept where I was just like, what can I make? I
Well,
want to make a thing.
but I mean, okay, so now you want to make colors that haven't really been made before, right? Things that
Mhm.
don't exist in nature that we know of, and things that you can kind of put your own like unique artistic flair on things, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would have driven your character to pursue that? Is there like something in this world that like people? Are we like a group of rebels in this world? If puppetry is rebellious, like is going against the norm of color rebellious, or
I don't know.
Mm.
am I looking too far into it?
Yes. No, because like, and I think that is potentially like one of the flaws of this is that like the scale on which we are operating is like very different. Like mine is much more like, it's like this sort of like interpersonal journey of like, I want to have this thing to my name. Cause like, I imagine like we're in this coastal town, we're seeing a lot of trade coming in from different places, a lot of like new and exciting and interesting things. And I think there's this feeling as a person that's like settled in this town rather than like someone coming in or out of like, I have to have something to contribute to this like wider.
Yeah.
Mm.
Put your stamp
Situation.
on the world.
Right. And so like mine is much more of like a personal journey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rather like it's not something it is still outward in a way of like I want to put this thing out in the world, but the reason I do is for me. It's not because I'm trying to like bring
Right.
back something that was banned and show the world this thing and like recruit other people to be able to do it. It's just like this is a need that I need to fulfill to like prove to myself that I can.
That makes sense.
Right.
And so it's like we're operating on a very different scale there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, and because your character, Ryan, as you just want to just use your money you just basically found us and we're just like, all right, Here's some money.
Let's see where this goes.
What if I found the puppetry stuff first? It intrigued me, and I'm not like deeply rooted into the history of why puppetry is banned or anything like that. Like, I know about it, I learned about it, but it was just always like an aside thing, and maybe it was a long time ago.
I also wonder,
happened.
like, if you have this sort of like noble background, are you coming at it from like a very different like political view of like, you know, like your family would potentially be the people that like these shows were aimed at.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe.
So like
maybe.
what you were taught about like it was banned and it was like this was good for the people because it brought peace and, you know, like
no more dissenters.
Yeah,
right.
but then I maybe stumbled into an underground puppet show and was just like, this is why this is amazing.
This
why
is not anything like what I was taught.
Yeah, like this is like the creativity that goes into these shows and everything.
Yeah.
And then maybe I found our puppeteer and thought, well, you know, how can I help to make this better? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And maybe it was like the clothing or something like that on your puppets wasn't the greatest.
Yeah.
Right.
Better.
Like you, because you're good at the woodworking and the machinery of it all, but then the clothing, you're just like, well, you need clothes. Here you go, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I just been pasting mushrooms on them, essentially.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Which again, like, you know, like I do think we can go interesting places there, but again, as like sort of a,
I feel like
I don't
right
want to say
now,
like a fault of the game that it's just sort of like, puppets were closed, so now Amelia's character could be here.
Well,
you know?
yeah, and it's like at this point in time, you kind of need to. There's a lot of work that you would have to do to make it work. There's not a lot of good tools in the game itself.
Right.
And I was lucky in that I had a good group of players when I first started this. And as a GM, I had experience already GMing things. So I kind of knew how to put things together to make a goal and kind of how to like massage things to kind of make sense. Right.
Right.
So after that, like it's one of those things too, where we didn't really talk a lot about the goals and like we just did like a couple lines of like what's intrinsically motivating each character so that I understand. And then I kind of set a scene to show how you guys were all like how everybody got together. And then we kind of built the plot as we went. Yeah. Because it turned out eventually that one of the characters really was against capitalism. And I was like, all right, so the big bad is capitalism. How am I going to put this into the game? Which turned into exploiting a workforce and then for MacGuffins. And then then the campaign started to build itself and like the story things and like the hooks I could drop in happen. But yeah, to make everything cohesive at the beginning,
it feels like a lot of work.
It feels like it was. Like I said, our session 0 was like 3 hours long.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, it feels like it. And again, some of that probably is the fact that like the goal of the game is this journey, but like it feels like it leaves a lot of things too open.
Yeah, for some people for sure. Like I feel like if you're the kind of person who just wants to like, all right, we're just gonna make these this works really well for one shots. I will say that very well. Like I've written several modules, just one shots that are like, because like the personal object is just enough to like have people springboard. They can bring it up every once in a while, and that's all I need for like a 3-hour one shot.
Right.
But for a campaign, but the game itself doesn't feel set up for like a true long campaign for me. But I'm kind of older. Like I can do like for me a campaign. I'm used to my friend Josh who wants to run campaigns for like 5 years.
Yeah.
No, it should have a defined, like, we talked about that on one episode, that a lot of campaigns end up sort of being unsatisfied because they have a beginning and a middle and a middle and a middle and a middle.
Yeah.
And then they kind of just like...
Yeah, and so I had, you know, as a player for as long as I was too, I went into this going, I want to get, you know, 12 sessions.
Right, which I think isn't good.
We can probably get up to maybe, but they cap out level-wise. Like, you do level your characters, and they cap out, I think, at level 10 is, like, the highest level.
So, yeah, then if you're picking that, like, double XP object for your, you know, like, you've set a
they
limit.
they scaled up fast, which
Mhm.
is fine because that meant I wanted to experience the full breadth of this game
Yeah.
Right.
before I went on. I think this kind of game, this character creation is it's set up. You kind of you have to bring a lot to it, and if
Mhm.
you're kind of person who wants to bring a lot to it, I think part of probably the reason why character creation is so feels weird too is like there's not a setting. You also
Yeah.
are the setting creator for this as well.
hmm
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, so I have a lot of work I have to do in order for us to like get into it, you know?
And I don't, and again, like doing the setting second,
Yep, doesn't make sense.
it makes character creation harder because it was a lot
Yeah.
of like, like, what is your look? And it was like, well, like Ryan was like cat person. And I was like, okay, so now you've defined this thing about the world. Like we
Yep.
haven't like, touched on any of that. Like,
Exactly.
it doesn't give you a lot to hook onto. And I also think that like the world building stuff that was in the book was like pretty like it was, it was like a system of government. And then it kind of defined what a system of government is.
Right.
And it was like, it didn't, like help you ask specific questions or kind of
Right.
go along.
And
with that.
it feels very much a product of its time.
Right. Right.
Which makes sense. I really wish they would do a second edition of this game because the building blocks are all there.
Yep.
And you just add the proper extra little bits and this could really shine, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot here that just like got really close and
Yep. Absolutely.
didn't get there. Yeah.
So through all of that, still in the fanfic portion, I think our character goals would be to change the law, right?
Yeah.
Like we're journeying through the country to go town to town to do puppet shows,
To bring
And
the good word of puppetry.
bring good word of
Yes.
puppetry, and to discover the pigment that doesn't exist yet. And by the time we get to the end, we want our puppets decked out in this new pigment color to really wow the rulers of the kingdom to change the rules.
That sounds great.
I want some kind of tie between this pigment and the rulers. Like, is this like a royal color or like
A mystical, like sought after MacGuffin thing.
Oh
that
yeah,
doesn't-
like
no.
a fabled color that
Mm.
never existed, and now it's like maybe the visor of the royal court or whatever recognizes this color has significance.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like some kind of fable of like
Yeah.
it was a member of the royal family that made it, and that is the reason that they get to rule. Like I would like that to be tied to some sort of like,
Over more than just, this came from a rare plant.
Yeah.
Right. I would love to have it like some political significance to this color too.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And then, like, it would be really interesting for your character, the noble character, to be like discovering this knowledge along the way as we're playing it. And then it's like because like that's a big thing about the noble is like the education and then
Yeah.
being able to get information out of other people too. So it's
Mhm.
like you are you're using your status to help us get information to then find
And
the
I think
things that
to
we're
like grant us a level of legitimacy too.
Yes.
It's like, okay, but like we have this noble with us, so it's fine.
yeah.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to destigmatize puppetry, and
Right.
we're gonna do it, and then having a noble like showing support of it is gonna help that
Absolutely.
destigmatization.
And I think like, maybe like this color being attached to like the royal family or something like that.
Mhm.
It's like if we start outfitting
Mhm.
your puppets in those colors, like it becomes
Ooh.
immediately more subversive.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well,
Mhm.
see, now we did it. We tied
We managed
ourselves
it.
all together.
Somehow we made
Ah.
the puppets make sense.
And I can
That-
see how this
that
campaign would
imagination.
flow,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Now I can see that there's this journey from our small little village to the royal palace to get these laws changed and make the world a better place with puppets
Through the force of combat puppetry,
through the
Yeah.
force of combat puppetry.
if necessary.
If necessary. I don't use force unless it's necessary.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Amazing.
We got there.
We did it. So our last one, let's get a little bit into our advancement discussion and take it up a level.
Take it up a level. Take it up a level.
Yeah, I know. I hate it. Every time I have to say it, I'm like, this is dumb. So in this segment, we like to talk about both character advancement and character growth. Mm-hmm. So to start off, how does a character like quote unquote level up in Ryuutama, and then kind of what changes mechanically as that happens?
Sure. And I have a cheat sheet just for that. Look at me with my GM notebook. So there is an experience point system. Basically, if you are rolling against terrain, right? Like you're doing your travel checks, you get XP according to the topography that you're going through. So topography is your terrain plus weather. So you could have like grasslands and rain or mountains and snow. And each of those have like a number that correlates. You add them together and people have to roll against that number. So basically, if you're rolling a target number that used to be is like 5 to 7, you'll get 100 XP. The next bracket is 8 to 10, 200, 11 to 13, 300. And if you're rolling 14 higher, you get 500 XP. But that's really difficult terrain. Like that's like you're climbing up the mountain and it's ice. And then every time a Ryujin uses a benediction ability, you get 50 XP. And then if there is a monster that you defeated, you would get XP 10 times the level of the highest monster level that you defeated. So in my game, my players, and this is why we did a lot of home rule stuff. They didn't like to fight monsters all the time, mostly because I made every monster a monster that was just misunderstood and not necessarily a bad thing. So they didn't have fighting things. And so I said, if you can find other ways around doing the monster, I will still give you XP. You don't have to defeat it. You just have to overcome it somehow.
Yeah.
And if they didn't have a monster and it was a social situation, a social problem, I gave them XP for social reasons as well. But that's me, again, looking for that more, right? Like this didn't have it, so we had to make it up. So then as you're leveling your character, you will get new abilities and you get to increase certain things. So basically, your HP and MP are increased. Each level that you gain, you get 3 points to divide between the two. So if you went from level 1 to level 2, you have 3 points. You can put all 3 into your HP, or you can put all 3 into your MP, or you can do a split of some sort.
Okay.
Also, that your carrying capacity will increase by 1 as well. And then depending on the level that you're at, that you get new abilities. So if you go to level 2, you get to increase 1 stat. You get this ability called Feint and Search during combat. And then there's just a whole chart that goes up, right? So like to get to level 2, you have to get 100 XP. To get to level 3, you have to have 600 XP, and then so on and so forth. And then you get like weather or terrain specialty. So like at level 3, you can say, I walked through so much grassland now that I am just like immune to grassland effects, essentially. Like you get an immunity, or you become specialized in it. And then like there's also like status effect immunity. We didn't talk about status effects, but that's fine. I think I did. It's related to your condition. I think I did it in the last episode. You can get an extra class. You could become a farmer minstrel if you wanted to, or you could become
you sing to your tomatoes.
Yes, exactly. And then you could also at some point get an extra type. So you could be, a minstrel, farmer, a technical attack type, or just double up. You can also choose to just double up that stuff. You don't have to multi-class. I have never ever gotten our character to level 9, which is they get the favor of the seasonal dragons. But yeah, 10 is the highest you can go, and that's it. That's leveling up. It's again very small scale, very simple. And my group also was like, I want that more. They were like, I want more than just getting an extra class.
Yeah.
And only just an extra class of the original 7 that we have.
Yeah. Which, especially when you already like potentially have another one of those in the party too.
Right, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, with 4 people, if you all take a second class, somebody's going to overlap at some point,
Right.
which makes sense. Interesting. Is there any like narrative implications for the leveling up process, or is it just like, here's what you get, enjoy?
Here's what you get, enjoy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing that my players we had to also like, it's like, why am I now like specialized in forest?
Yeah.
Like, we didn't go through forest, so I guess
Yep.
it only makes sense to do grassland. And
Yep.
they're like, but I want to choose forest. And it's like, well, make it stretch. Did you read about it someplace? That doesn't make sense though, you know?
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. This is the I learned how to sail going through a dungeon
Yes.
example
right,
that we
yes.
constantly point at. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's yeah, again, a game of its time, right?
Yep.
They haven't really done anything like that until like, early to mid teens of the 2000s, and it's like that's a relatively recent concept in role playing, to have the narrative growth along with the mechanical stuff.
Yep.
So there you go. Pretty straightforward leveling system at the very
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
And going into it expecting it to level kind of like a JRPG really is what you need to do at that point, because again, JRPGs notorious for, I leveled up, here's 6 mind, 5 strength, 10 hit points, and you get 1 extra spell. And
Right.
not now have fun being stronger for the
Yep.
next stuff that happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we did a lot of critical analysis of this game. And is there anything else that we want to say? I know this is one of your favorite games, Amber. Is there anything else that you want to just throw out about the game?
Yeah.
Why should people play this game?
Why? I think it's because as like for me as a GM and my brain, I like creating things, right?
Mhm.
So for me, this was the perfect, like, I just needed some sort of system that was simple enough for me to like, I don't want to sweat like this, all of the like D&D stuff. Like, I don't want to think about all the math. I don't want to think pick strength, pick spirit. Let's roll these 2. Let's go. I really like the dice. Like your stats are your dice. And for me, I do like journey stuff. Like like I'm playing this game to talk about and describe the vistas you're going through, or like little things that you're going to be interacting with and that kind of stuff. It's not that's why it's my favorite, in that that's the focus of this game. If I wanted to play a social interaction game, I would be going to play something different. But for me, this is all about describing environment. Like, I like I was able to inject my own, like, how I interact with games like JRPGs and those adventure puzzle games, right? Like you go into this area and you find X. Yeah. And then you get to go, ooh, what is X? I'm looking at X. I push X when I pick it up, like,
right.
That is what this game is. And you can tell it through the character creation, the like no setting, the very light mechanic rule stuff, how you have to like kind of like mold things the way you want it. So that's why I love this game. Yeah. Because it's just enough to give me, the GM, things to play with, but it's not a social interaction game. Yeah. It's a travel game. And so if people come to Ryuutama and go, ooh, I'm going to have a cute like Studio Ghibli, like, you're gonna have to make that, like, as a group, as a GM, and you're not going to have these like if you've listened this far to the podcast, like we said, we've been very critical of it. There is not that like making interpersonal bonds with each other that is not propped up. That will just happen kind of naturally if you have a good group of role players, and there is a lot of work. So that is why you want to play Ryuutama. If you feel that kind of feeling that I have, like I want to make things, I like JRPGs, I'm going to have to put a lot of creative work into it. I have to build my own world. That's what Ryuutama is for.
It really feels like Ryuutama was a stepping stone in the progression of the evolution of role-playing games. Right? It's got the rules light, which was kind of sparse for the time. It's got collaborative world building, which was sparse for the time. It's got all these like precursor elements of some of the greatest things we've got in the indie scene nowadays. So absolutely, I can see the importance of this game, especially when you consider it was released in 2007. And the journey sounds really fascinating. And again, for everybody that I've talked to that has played and loved this game says it is so cozy.
Right. Yeah.
And that,
I mean, like to give it an idea of like some of the adventures that I would write is literally like, this family needs you to collect cranberries to make juice. This person wants your help shearing their sheep for this, thing. My minstrel, he would write songs to sing when they would, and he would actually like perform them as they were walking through. And that's the kind of stuff that I was making up for this game. And like, it's the aesthetic, the feel, the journey, the rules that are pointed. It's trying to get you to tell those kinds of like smaller stories, not like big world, like ending, there's a prophecy and you need to fulfill this and your destiny. It's like, nah, these people just want to get some berries.
It's low stakes.
Right.
It's nice. I like that. Well,
which is, it's nice sometimes. Like it's low stress. It's, you know, which sometimes I think we all need in our lives.
Absolutely. And if the creators of Ryuutama are listening, a second edition, not a bad idea. Just saying.
Do you need somebody to help you with your character sheet design?
We happen to know a person who is quite good at that whole process behind character sheets. So just saying. Well, Amber, thank you so much for joining us to talk about Ryuutama. This was fantastic.
Thank you. I I had a great time. Like I haven't realized it's been several hours. Right. Since we started talking, because I love this. I love talking about game stuff, and I am okay with being critical about the things that I love.
Absolutely.
I always say though that like I think the more you love something, almost like the easier it is to see those like niggly bits.
Yes.
You know, like all the places where it's like, like you're so it doesn't quite work because you are so familiar with it and you know it so deeply and so well. That I think a lot of times the criticism isn't from a place of like, I don't like it. It's just, it comes from a place of familiarity more than anything. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, can you remind everybody where they can find you online and what sort of things you're working on?
Yeah. So rocketorca.com, that's my website where you can see my portfolio for all my graphic design stuff, my blog posts about character sheets. I'll try to get that up sooner rather than later so that way you guys can link to people to show them like the journey of character sheets that I did for Ryuutama. Other things I'm doing, I own a TTRPG indie publishing company called Cloud Curio, and we're working on a big project right now that's a GM prep tool. I just talked a lot about how I just love creating things, and so I am a person who wants to make things for GMs to be able to use to enhance their games, and the big thing we're doing is called Monstrous. It is all about monsters, but focusing on the stories behind the stat blocks.
Mhm.
There's not going to be a stat block. It's system neutral, and it's really talking about like the essence of monsters and how to incorporate them for better narrative
Mhm.
storytelling. And you can find that on our website, thecloudcurio.com. And then we're Cloud Curio or Cloud Curio Games on most places. And I'm Rocket Orca on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, every social media now.
Yeah.
Every social media you can think about, I'm probably on because whatever, Twitter.
Who knows where we're going to be, right? Right. Yeah. Same here. It's like, I'll just go grab this handle wherever and probably never use it. But just in case.
Just in case.
But I'm most active on Tumblr, Twitter, and Instagram.
Mhm.
Well, thank you again for sitting down with us. And thank you to everyone for tuning in.
Call to action.
Yeah, like that. This was a really interesting discussion.
It was.
We mentioned it a little bit, I think, last time.
Mhm,
We
mhm.
started to hint at it. But this is, I think, the first time that we've kind of come up like lukewarm on a game. There have been a couple that we covered with Jeff and John that we knew were going to be bad.
Mhm.
And then the majority of them we were really excited about.
Mhm.
And so this is the first time I think we've come up kind of like, on a game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's honestly only in this initial character creation sort of process. Like we went by the book and used the character sheets and whatnot from the book.
Mhm.
And the process was just a little clunkier than it needed to be. And
Yeah.
I think with a little bit of home rules and your own character sheets, this game is probably a little bit more accessible. And it sounds like it's still a lot of fun to play, right?
Yeah, I keep hearing from people that it's a lot of fun. For me, it was about the fact that we came out of doing that character creation and I just didn't feel like super attached to things because we didn't know anything about the world and, which we kept coming back to the fact that like, oh, you're supposed to do that as you play. But I'm just like not.
Yeah.
I'm
it's
not
interesting.
seeing it.
It's very interesting.
So,
I still think I'm personally kind of attached to the idea that we came up with.
Yeah.
Like
I think
we're a
I'm
level
not,
removed, right?
Right. Because I felt like we very much had to like shoehorn my character in too.
Yeah.
which
That's fair.
was kind of like, and I didn't make anything like crazy and out there, so it just didn't.
I get that.
I think maybe like yours just clicked really well and
Exactly.
it was like a little harder, but
it was still fun. It was a good discussion and I'm glad that we did it. Because
I'm glad we really got to get into like the character sheet stuff too.
Yeah, exactly. And if anything, it'll prove to be, I think, a good reminder for game designers out there to take a look at these sort of things because, like, goodness, we
they
want
matter.
They matter, and we want to learn from mistakes made by both ourselves and others, and improve upon everything that's come before. So
definitely,
there you go.
In January, we are going to be releasing a series where Ryan and I sit down and talk about everything we did in 2022. So not a new game, but we decided to recap the things that we've covered, the games, the characters we've made, and then we go through and discuss favorite things that happened in 2022. Our top world building moments, our favorite mechanics, our favorite characters, which I forced Ryan to pick, even though he was like, I love all my children equally.
That's my babies.
We also get to talk about what we're looking forward to in 2023. We would love to hear your favorite things from our 2022 catalog, though. I always like knowing what clicked with people and what things they got something out of or what things just tickled them.
Yeah.
So you can share those with us on our Discord server. It's discord.charactercreationcast.com or any of our other various social media accounts.
Yeah.
Find us all over the place. But you can go ahead and tag us. And if you want, you can use the hashtag C3 in 2022.
There you go. As mentioned in our opening, some of you may have noticed ads in your feeds. This is part of the One Shot Network's move to Megaphone, our new hosting service. Revenue from these ads are going to help fund the network and its shows like ours. And if you want a more thorough overview of what this means and why this happened, James actually released a bonus episode over on the campaign feed that we will link in the show notes. It's only about 6 minutes and it's very informative. The ads don't cover all of our costs though, so we do also have a Patreon for the show. And if you do not like ads at all, you can actually get access to an ad-free episode feed by becoming a patron of Character Creation Cast at the side quest level, the $5 level and up. You'll get access to this and a whole bunch more.
We have levels available from $1 a month all the way to $50 a month if you wanted. And tons of benefits available, including bonus episodes, weekly chit-chat conversations between Ryan and I, just talking about life, monthly Zoom calls to hang out with other patrons.
So much fun.
And potentially even private games with us if you want.
Yeah.
You can find all of that at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. Plus, if you join, we get to read your name and say thank you out loud on every episode, like right now.
Yes. So we would like to thank all of our continuing patrons, starting with Lieutenant, our first patron. Thank you so much.
DJG, aka Tigranosaurus, thank you for your continued support.
Eric Bonds, you rock. Thank you.
Matt Newton, thank you so much.
Shadim Cabal, thank you for your continued support.
Daryl Holiday II, thank you so much.
Thank you to the Shyest Barbarian.
Benjamin Sweeney, we appreciate your support.
Lorcan McGinnis, thank you for your continued support.
Rob Fletcher, you are amazing. Thank you so much.
Kevin Brown, we're happy to have you here with us. Thank you.
Tentacle Duck, thank you for your support.
We appreciate your support so much. John Adamus, thank you.
A3 Sketchpad, so many thanks to you. Thank you also to all of our future patrons, just in advance. You all truly make it easier for us to make the show, and we are so grateful for all of your support. If you aren't able to chip in financially, though, you can still do us a huge favor by leaving a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, and Podcast Addict, and Facebook. We read every 5-star review on our episodes. For example, this one.
Yeah, this one comes in from Vince Basile on Facebook. I hope we got your name right. Vince wrote, "This is a great pod for getting a feel for different RPGs. Each series covers creating characters with a guest who plays or actually made the game. Amelia and Ryan are great together. They are a bit of yin and yang in their characters and complement each other in their approaches. I have listened since nearly the beginning, and the chemistry between them continues to work and grow. I really appreciate the pods with actual play guests, see Blades in the Dark, to get me into games and other podcasts. If I could leave a rating on CastBox where I listen, it would be 5 out of 5. Thanks." Well, thank you so much, Vince. This was a really lovely review to get.
It was really nice.
Yeah.
I love that you appreciate our chemistry.
I do too.
I like our chemistry.
I like our chemistry too.
I do feel like in the last year we've really come into our own on that one. So, thank you so much, Vince.
Well, that's all that we have for 2022, everybody. It's weird to say that, but goodness gracious, if the stars align, we might have one more bonus thing coming out next week. So for our patrons, so for at least $1, you can get access to that too. So have a good rest of your year, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you join us in 2023. And goodness,
I know it feels so weird. It's like 2022 is over.
It's over. Yeah. Drink some water. Relax your shoulders. Maybe set a New Year's resolution to listen to more podcasts.
Yeah.
And, keep making those amazing people. We'll see you next time.
Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can be found on Twitter at CreationCast or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Amelia Antrim, and I can be found on Twitter at Ginger Reckoning or on my other podcast, Garbage of the Five Rings. Our other host, Ryan Bolter, can be found on Twitter at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permission from the podcast it originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by the absolutely fantastic Ryan Bolter. Further information for the game system used in today's guests can also be found in the show notes. If you'd like to support our show, find us on Patreon. Get access to bonus episodes, extra outtakes, and much, much more at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. Thanks for joining us. And remember, we find the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We'll see you next time. I did it.
Cookie.
I did too, but I lost my clicky.
What?
I
What do you
lost my E at
Oh
the end there.
no.
Mm.
E.
It's not going to be
Um,
authentic anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Did I click too late? That's the problem.
Oh, close
I'll figure
enough.
it out.
One sec here.
I'll figure it out.
So like I printed out when I first started a 11 by 17. Let me say it again because my chair just creaked. Sorry. So when I first started GMing, let me say it again. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Is that a plane going overhead?
I don't hear anything. Why do you hear things?
I don't know. I hear a rumble.
Maybe it's going over your head.
Maybe it is.
Maybe.
Sorry, I'm giggling because Ryan's cat is walking on the keyboard and like typing things in the outline. I'm like, what am I doing? No, okay. Sorry. That can go in the outtakes later where it's just like a bunch of numbers and
It's like, no, what are you doing?
Hi, Peaches.
He is thirsty. Let me turn on his water for a little bit. It won't
Okay.
be too much background noise.
It
There
gives
we
me
go.
time to drink some coffee.
I know, like soft
go.
spa sounds maybe in the background for Ryan with this little cat water fountain
There you
fancy
go.
thing that
There
he's
you
turning
go.
on with his phone and
I
his.
could turn it on with my phone.
What?
I have it plugged into a smart outlet.
Oh,
So it's not the fountain that's smart. It's the outlet that
The
it's
outlet.
plugged into.
Yes.
I'm not that fancy. That's like probably an extra $100 for a water fountain for a cat.
And it has
Okay.
like lights in it.
I know, right?
But Mr. Peaches would be worth it.
It would be worth it. Absolutely.
He's a very sweet cat.
I know. He's adorable.
I mean, I don't even usually like cats. It's gonna be out
Ooh,
there. Like everyone, Amelia doesn't really like cats.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm severely allergic to them.
I know.
Aw.
They like me just fine. Which is part of the problem, really.
All right. Cat is just meowing at me up a storm right now.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure what he needs. He's got water. He's got food.
Attention.
Comfy bed. He's too far away for attention. He's just meowing at me. What you doing, man?
I did it.
There it is.
I made sure to elongate my E at the end there.
You
So
did
I
it.
actually got it this time. On the ball.
Okay.
There we go.
And we're done.
Woohoo.
We did it.
Start the recording.